Have you ever sat down to play a game and thought to yourself, I want to play something scary, only to endlessly search your respective digital store or home library, unsure of which games are actually scary?
I have. Hello gamers, and welcome to the game review where we ask the question, is it scary? The subject of today's video is The Evil Within 2, fittingly released in October of 2017. Sadly, The Evil Within 2 was considered something of a flop on its initial release. Its initial sales were only about a quarter of those achieved by the first game. Though there were some hiccups when the game first released, this game is truly in many ways a step up from the original. This game is chock full of impressive visuals and fantastic transitions. Oddly, this game has a mixture of tones that, unlike Resident Evil 6, it manages to blend very well. What do I mean by this? Let's find out and get into the game.
The game opens with the backstory our protagonists most desperately needed. Sebastian returns home to find his house set ablaze. He burst in hoping to save his little girl Lily. Sadly, she perished in the fire, sending Sebastian into a downward spiral that ruins both his marriage and very nearly his career. Though I still wish this scene was in the original, it's a solid way of introducing us to more of the trauma Sebastian is dealing with. When we finally catch back up with Seb in present day, he's a broken man. No one believes what happened to him at Beacon Hospital, and after a mandatory psych evaluation, he is put on permanent leave of absence. With no job and no family, he seeks the solution to life's problems at the bottom of a bottle. Awakening from his drunken stupor, he's greeted by Kidman and this game's plot. Long story short, his daughter is alive. The fire was a setup to hide the fact that Mobius kidnapped her. Why do you ask? Because her mind is perfect for the new STEM system they've built. Turns out though, things are no longer going to plan. Lily has stopped sending signals and the STEM environment is beginning to fall apart. The story as a whole can be boiled down to the simplest and most relatable of plot points. The love between a parent and their child. Something most of us can relate to. The character development in this game is far superior to that of the original. Sebastian speaks and emotes. He even talks to himself.
What the hell?
Giving the player a deeper understanding of his mindset at that point in the game.
I'll be out here for you, and someone else will be in there for you.
Kidman. She knew about Myra.
This is actually true of all this title's characters. You become truly invested in these characters and their goals, creating a level of immersion that the original failed to achieve. This immersion helps you get lost in the world of STEM, making the stakes of this game feel all the more real to you, which actually gives this game's monsters the most potential to frighten you. Speaking of, the formerly human creatures that you encounter upon entering Union are known as the Lost.
An exceedingly cooler name if you ask me.
These mutated, mindless, zombie-like creatures are the most common enemy you'll face in Union. While The Evil Within 2 reintroduces these base enemies, it soon greets us with new enemy types. The first of these is the equally common Spawn.
No, not him. These things.
Spawns are frightening abominations that appear to be a fusion of at least 4 people. Quick and agile, these things are clearly this title's more creative answer to the Resident Evil zombie dogs. Then, there is the creepiest common enemy type, being the Lament. The Lament is among the most repugnant deformed creatures in the game. It appears to have formed from at least 2 female hosts, It's sickening and morbid looking, which of course means I love it. Something the original game is exceedingly good at is its amazing creature designs, and the frightening, grotesque monster trend continues here. This is even more prevalent with the bosses you'll encounter in later chapters. Namely, the Guardian, this game's version of the Sadist, or the Harbinger, a firefighter's worst nightmare. Or my absolute favorite, Anima. Visually, Anima resembles a disheveled woman clad in tattered robes. Her face is shrouded by long hair and briefly visible when attacking the player. Although she walks with a slow and shuffling movement, she is capable of an alarming rush of speed when pursuing a victim. Namely you. Ghosts and demons are amongst my favorite antagonists in horror movies, games, and books. You name it, I love it. Heck, they're my favorite Pokemon type. In a distinct change from the original game, The Evil Within 2 is an open world game allowing you to explore at your own pace. It even has a few side quests that reward you with weapons and ammo. It makes the whole world feel more lived in and real. Hopefully, you've invested enough green goo into necessary skill trees, as whether you go loud or quiet, it's best to be cautious. While the creatures in this game are arguably not as iconic as those in the original, and don't really have a single theme tying them together the way Rubik's Trauma did in the first game, they are creative enough to make a lasting impact on you, unlike this game's primary antagonist. The Evil Within 2 is a game of two halves. The first half being a decently creepy and foreboding tale as you are greeted early by Stefano Valentini. Formerly a war photographer, he loses his mind after years of photographing the horrors of war. His ultimate tipping point being when he accidentally captures the exact moment a fellow soldier was killed, imbuing him with a lifelong obsession that he comes to fully embrace once in STEM.
I am Stefano, and now you are my art.
Anyway, Stefano's section of the game is truly the creepiest, as you constantly run into his art. The early chapters are filled with the twisted remnants of his victims. These visions of horror are akin to something out of Hellraiser. The idea of any child being held by this twisted connoisseur of morbid visages is enough to send a chill up your spine. But the fact that it's your own daughter makes the whole situation downright terrifying. The final encounter with Stefano is a simple but effective run and gun, as you spend a majority of it dodging his attacks and traps, looking for any opening to create some art of your own. Once dispatched, we meet the true antagonist of The Evil Within 2, Theodore Wallace, aka Father Theodore, a former motivational speaker and spiritual leader. Seeing the potential in STEM, Theodore plotted to use it to usurp control of Mobius and eventually the world. Theodore began to gather followers, allowing him to take control of Union. One of such people was Stefano Valentini. In exchange for finding Lily, Stefano would be allowed a degree of freedom within Union. However, Stefano decided against giving Lily to Theodore upon discovering how powerful she was.
But once I realized the extent of her powers, how could I possibly hand her over?
There is just no honor among thieves.
Theodore spends the rest of the game trying to win your allegiance, and honestly, the whole story between him and Sebastian was dull and repetitive. The one redeeming aspect of their encounter is Sebastian's character growth. After facing his past and re-encountering fan favorites like the Sadist, the Keeper, and Laura, Sebastian finally accepts that it wasn't his fault and works up the courage to beat them all and win back his soul. Theodore is responsible for the creation of the Harbingers and the Disciples. Sadly, that is the most interesting thing about Father Theodore. In regard to our topic, his section is less creepy and more annoying than anything. He spends a majority of his screen time trying to convince you to join his cult, and each time you refuse, he just kind of sends you away. At no point does he feel like a primary antagonist, just more of a nuisance. I would have greatly preferred if Theodore and Stefano had swapped roles. You don't even get to finish Theodore as, surprise, your wife Myra claims that kill, and double surprise, she's the final boss.
Oh, spoiler alert, I suppose? I mean, it's a 6-year-old game, guys. Come on, get with the program.
Yeah, so it seems that Myra's maternal instinct has kicked into high gear and thus deems everyone, Sebastian included, as a threat. Sadly, you are forced to take Myra out in order to grab Lily and get her out of STEM before it collapses. It's sort of heart-wrenching to have to put her down, as she's just a mama bear protecting her cub. An extreme case of mommy and daddy fighting each other for the child's well-being. Honestly, this whole thing could probably be used as an allegory for divorce.
Wait. Is it?
I really enjoyed the ending this time around. I thought it was creative and better thought out than that of its predecessor. It even leaves the door open for a sequel that may never come. Though it's been 6 years, I don't know. I still have hope that The Evil Within 3 will happen.
All that being said, let's answer the question. Is it scary? Yes, in the beginning. Everything leading to and including Stefano was unsettling. And whether I'd like to admit it or not, there are points where I jumped more than once. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the scariest, it's a solid 4.5 up until Stefano. After him, however, it's more of a 1 out of 10. So this title as a whole really isn't the scariest thing out there, but I have to admit, in terms of it being a survival horror game, it is a true masterpiece. An ode to the titles that we grew up loving. Now, if I'm being completely honest with you, I really thought that the whole open world aspect would take away from it. But to my surprise, the openness of it really adds to the scares. You never really know what you're going to run into when entering a new house in search of health or ammo. Hell, you could accidentally miss entire sections of the town. I mean, not for me personally, because I need to scour every inch of whatever map I'm on before I move on to the next section. I don't know, is that just a me thing? Is it? I can't be the only one that needs to search everything or do all the side missions before proceeding with the story. Imagine my excitement / terror when I encountered Anima for the first time. I just love ghosts. Your lack of resources and the unique monster designs make for a scary good time, especially on harder difficulties. The scares in this game are about on par with Pandorum and the Babadook. I hope you guys liked that review. If you agree, let me know. Even if you don't agree, hell, chime off in the comments. I'd love to have an open forum conversation about this. Despite all of its flaws, this franchise is among one of my favorites. I'm just really sad that the third game never got to see the light of day. Our next review will be on Dead Space, so make sure you check back for that. And if you're not, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another scary video. So until then, remember, evil only has the power that we ourselves give it. See you around.
Let me in.